Good evening, all. Welcome to the Maxi Geek show, where we're going to talk about some of the big news of the week, some of the smaller news of the week, and some of the news you may not even be aware of. We're going to get straight into it this week because there is actually a fair bit I want to get through because there's been a fair bit of news. We have some big news from Nintendo, a lot of news from PlayStation, and then some updates for existing games and beyond. So we're jumping straight into it. We're going to jump straight in with a look at the Nintendo numbers. Now, normally Maxi Geek does not cover business related issues. We don't talk about sales numbers. We don't talk about how well game company X did with a particular product. They want to pat themselves on the back. That's great, but we don't do that for them. Now, the reason why I brought this up, this is courtesy of Vooks.net, which is the sort of Nintendo site for Australia, is because the Switch has now sold 103 million consoles. So if I bring it down here, so we're going to get past all the nitty-gritty and just look at some numbers. So at the end of their last quarter, which ended on September 30th, we got the numbers in the beginning of November. They had 92.87 million. This quarter, so the quarters are October 1st to December 31st, they sold 11 million consoles, bringing their total to 103 million. The reason why this is impressive is this is now Nintendo's best-selling console, a home console of all time, passing the Wii's 101 million. Right? Being that it's now at 103 million, this is also now the fifth most best-selling games platform of all time. So we're not talking about we're not talking about home console and handheld devices. No, we're talking overall. So at the moment, Switch is sitting on 103.54 million. The next one up is the PlayStation 4 at 116 million. Then the Game Boy and Game Boy Color line, because they're essentially the same thing, they're sitting at 118 million. So given that the Switch generally has been selling around 20 to 22 million units a year since it released, it is possible that they'll hit, maybe 106, 107 million by the end of this fiscal year for them, which for Nintendo being a Japanese company is the end of March. And then if they happen to sell another 22 million over the next 12 months after that, that will take them up into the third position. That will bring them also to around 130 million consoles. From there, the odds of them hitting the second position or dethroning position number 2, that is the Nintendo DS family. So the DS, DS Lite, DSi, at 154 million units sold. And then beyond that, at number 1 is the PlayStation 2 with approximately 155 million. And we never got a final number from PlayStation on how many they sold there, but they did pretty well for themselves. The other numbers that we want to sort of talk on just quickly for Nintendo is that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is down the bottom here, has sold 43 million copies. Right, that's on Switch, right? If we include Mario Kart 8 from the Wii U, we're actually around 50 million, which is insane. But as you can see, that's up from 38 million. So that went up, 3.6 million copies in that recent quarter. Give me 1 second. Forgot to mute my phone. So we can see here Animal Crossing up from 34 million to 37 million. It had sort of slowed down, doing sort of a million per quarter over the most of the year, but that final quarter saw a big boost into it. So they did really, really well with their numbers, which is insane. We obviously expect Nintendo to have a lot of good selling titles. They tend to sell very well with the stuff they make. We got Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl launched on the 19th of November. So in the 6-ish weeks that game was on sale, they sold just under 14 million copies. Okay, so that goes to show how big Pokemon is. And then speaking of Pokemon, we also got word today that, again, we're using avux.net as our thing here, that Pokemon Legends Arceus, however you pronounce that, has sold 6.5 million copies. Now you got to remember, this game came out on Friday last week. So that means in the space of essentially 5 days, 6 days, sorry. No, hang on. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, yeah. So about 5 days, 6 days, depends on when they stopped counting. We've already seen 6.5 million copies of the newest Pokemon game, hit people's switches. The reason why this is big is because this is what many people wanted for years from Pokemon. They wanted it to become more of an open world. It's not quite an open world. It's probably a bit more like Monster Hunter. So you've got large spaces to explore. But yeah, they overhauled everything from there, making for one very, very big, experience across the board. Obviously, though, one of the bigger news stories from the start of the week is that PlayStation is set to acquire Bungie for $3.6 billion. Now, obviously, this is the third of 4 big buyouts already this year. Take-Two Interactive, who is the parent company for 2K and Private Division, they recently confirmed that they're buying Zynga, the mobile game maker, for $12 billion US. Obviously, Microsoft with its Activision purchase at $69 billion. And then just after this news of PlayStation buying Bungie, the New York Times, confirmed that they are buying Wordle, the word-based game that is taking, the world by storm at the moment. For the low, the official confirmation said the low 7 figures. So you could take that to mean $1 million on its own. You could take that to mean $5 million. Who knows? But back to the Bungie deal. So PlayStation is buying Bungie for $3.6 billion. Now, there are 3 very big takeaways for this. The first is that PlayStation, although they will be the owners of Bungie, they're not going to involve themselves in the running of Bungie. So Bungie themselves are a privately owned studio. They're not on the stock market, so nobody can go in and buy shares like they do for every other games maker around. What this means is that if somebody wants to purchase, if somebody wants to buy into Bungie, they have to buy out the staff that already work there that own those shares, which may equate for why it's such a big dollar amount. But I'll get back to that in a moment. The second thing of note is that Bungie has committed to staying a multi-platform studio going forward. Okay, and the third thing is that, according to reports from Sony themselves in their financial reporting, disclosure the other day, because it's that time of the year where everyone's putting out their third quarter results. According to PlayStation, approximately 1/3 of that $3.6 billion is basically a slush fund to ensure that folks at Bungie stick around once the buyout completes. Obviously, this is not going to go through the same sort of regulatory inspection that the Microsoft Activision deal is going to have to go through, because this is not a publicly traded company. Now, if we take away the $1.2 billion, a third of the price for that slush fund, and we look at the $2.4 billion on its own for Bungie, that is insanely overpricing that company. Now, everyone will say, oh, but Bungie created Halo, Bungie created Destiny. Yes, talented developers are worth investing in. PlayStation have done it already. Last year, they bought out House Marquee, who made Returnal. They bought out Bluepoint Games, who did the Demon Souls remake for the launch of the PlayStation 5. They bought out, starts with an N. I'm going to say Nettles, but that's not it. But a PC development sort of group in the Netherlands. So PlayStation themselves are investing in companies, and they're investing in the people at those companies. The reason why $2 billion for Bungie is is insane is because Bungie don't have $2 billion worth of assets. Okay? Again, everything that Bungie owns is owned by themselves, right? But the reason why that is overpricing it is because when PlayStation bought Insomniac Games, the folks who make Ratchet and Clank, who did the Spider-Man game, they've also done the Resistance Fall of Man titles. Back in the day, they did Fuse. And then for Xbox, they did Sunset Overdrive. Back when they bought them, they paid like $440 million, right? Now, this is a studio that has put out consistent hits on PlayStation, and PlayStation knew going forward what those deals were going to be like. They knew what, they were working on Spider-Man 2, they were working on Wolverine, right? They had an idea these things were coming because PlayStation were publishing those titles, right? So it made sense for them to pay as much as they did. $3.6 billion or $2.4 billion for a studio that has essentially got one IP in the market is not worth it. Again, this is not to say that the folks there aren't talented developers. They 100% are. But they're not worth $2 billion. The reason why it also makes no sense is because everyone keeps saying, yeah, they made Halo. It's like, yes, they made Halo. They made 5 titles, and then they said, we're done with this, right? The brand has been then kept alive by Microsoft. The other side of that argument is that, people say, oh, well, Bungie has this, they've been in the business for 30 years now. It's like, okay, but if I had to put a gun to somebody's head and say, okay, name me all the games Bungie have created, people are only going to come back and say Halo or Destiny. And the problem is Destiny on its own isn't drawing in players. If you're invested in that world, then you're invested and you're going to enjoy what they're creating. But as an experience, Destiny very rarely brings in new players. Like most of these live services in quotes, like most of those titles, like World of Warcraft, Rainbow Six Siege, things like that. Once the player base is established, it's very, very rare to see, them bring in new players. Now, there is reports, obviously, that Bungie has a lot of, new IP on the way. But that would want to be one hell of an impressive game for PlayStation to invest so much money into it. And again, this brings up the third point, is that PlayStation aren't touching, they're not getting involved in it, right? And this is not like Microsoft or Xbox saying, hey, we own Obsidian, we're going to let Obsidian do what they want to do, right? That's what Xbox are doing. They're letting Obsidian make the games they want to make, but those games are still being made for Xbox. The difference here is that PlayStation and Bungie have confirmed they're going to stay multi-platform. Now, when they've said this, they've kept saying multi-platform, and most people have gone ahead and gone, oh, that means Xbox, because they're already making for Xbox. They made for Xbox in the past. That's not the case. We don't know exactly what this means with multi-platform, but what I can say is that it's very unlikely for these things to remain on the Xbox platform. What is more than likely the case is PlayStation are going to be having these titles created for their console and for PC, and depending on spin-offs or whatever, maybe mobile. I don't see them creating, spending $3 billion on a company, spinning up a brand new IP and putting it on the competitor's platform. They may do that. They may say, no, we're going to do this because we believe in this. And again, Bungie are apparently having control over this to say they're going to publish wherever they want to publish. But I honestly suspect it's going to be more, we're going to stick with PC as our additional platform, which confirms their multi-platform point of view. So that's what I think is going to happen. Whether or not it does happen that way, it's hard to say, but that's what I honestly think is going to be the case. While we're talking about PlayStation putting games on other platforms, let's take a quick look at the collector's edition reveal trailer for MLB The Show 22.
Stopping us, we do the impossible. Ain't no stopping us, we do the impossible.
Now, the reason why I wanted to show that is because, one, it's a pretty cool animation on that for that trailer, and two is because it had the Switch logo at the front. Because MLB The Show has been a PlayStation exclusive series for a number of years, but a few years ago, in 2019, when the license was coming up for renewal, MLB, Major League Baseball, they basically said, "Hey, we want to put our game, our license on all the platforms." So whatever the deal was that PlayStation agreed to, San Diego Studio, which is what is the studio that makes this series, they now last year they did it with MLB The Show 21. It's a very unique naming system for these games. But MLB The Show 22 is coming to PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and Nintendo Switch on April 5th. And all platforms will have a digital deluxe version, which features this artwork that you're seeing on the screen now. And that will be out. That will provide 4 days of early access. Now, the reason why, so the player that we're seeing here is oh god, I can't remember his name. Shohei Ohtani. Okay, he played in Japan for a number of years. He got recruited by the, I hate this team name now. It used to just be called the Anaheim Angels, but now it's the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. They had to put Los Angeles in the start of it for some bizarre reason. But it's actually so he's a massive manga and anime fan. Growing up in Japan, what most kids are into there. But one of the things that PlayStation did is they went to the creator of Takashi Okazaki. I really need to read these things first. Who has created this artwork? If that name sounds familiar, he's the guy who created Samurai Champloo and a few other very well-known series. Owatani himself, the Angels, I follow baseball very lightly, but the Angels are the team that I picked as my team of choice. He played 46 games last year. He pitched, in most of them. He got 153 strikeouts from those 46 games. So he did really, really well. He is only 27. He did phenomenally well, in the 2021 season, and that's going to be great for the year. It's a little weird to see, the PlayStation logo and the Switch logo in the one sort of space. It was weird last year when we got it with the Xbox, so we're sort of used to it. But the fact that we're seeing it again is obviously very, very weird. The next sort of story I want to talk about is a little different. And that is, sorry, my system is being weird. There are reports that the Suicide Squad from Rocksteady Games is being delayed till 2023. Now, again, this is not a confirmed thing. This is a rumor. The game was originally announced back in 2020. It was due to be announced earlier that year, but when DC, with the pandemic, they pivoted to their Fandom event. They announced it there alongside Gotham Knights. What was a little interesting is that basically out of the gate, they said this is a 2022 game. So we heard about it in 2020. It was announced then that it was going to be 2022, and now we're barely into the second month of the year, and we're hearing reports that the game is being delayed till 2023. What is perhaps even more not sad, but a little disheartening is the fact that Rocksteady Games haven't actually produced anything since 2015's Arkham Knight. So this will be an 8-year gap between the release of their last main Arkham title and their next game. Obviously 8 years is a long time. Whether or not it's because the developers just need more time, maybe it's because management has changed their point of view on something, who knows. The CEO of the Warner Media Group did tweet out the other day, that Hogwarts Legacy, the Harry Potter sort of game, and Gotham Knights are both still on track for this year. And obviously we got a release date for Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga last week for April 5th. So that's obviously, those three are still due this year. But the fourth game that we knew was coming from Warner Brothers has been delayed apparently till 2023. I do wonder about the team, whether it's because they've just bitten off more than they can chew, or maybe it's something else entirely. I don't know, but it is a little weird to see them delaying the title again after such a lengthy development. Obviously, we've not played it yet because they've been very, very cautious with revealing things. We went an entire year between the reveal of it and our second look, which happened back during DC Fandom last year. And even then, that was just another trailer. We actually had to wait another 2 months before we got any additional information, and that was when we got the gameplay trailer. So it is something, that I would hope we'd see more of by now. And maybe that's why it's being delayed. Maybe they're just not comfortable with or the state of the game as it is now. More news out from this morning is that Ghostwire Tokyo is being released on March 25th for both PlayStation 5 and PC. Much like the Deathloop release last year, this is a PlayStation 5 console exclusive for 12 months at a minimum. So if you have an Xbox and you want to play it there, it's not going to be available at the earliest until the 25th of March 2023. Even though Tango Gameworks is now technically an Xbox studio, it is not going to release there because of the exclusive agreement that PlayStation and Bethesda came to prior to the acquisition of Bethesda by Microsoft. I'm not going to go into too much more about this because I have seen a lot more of the game, and once that embargo's up, I will be able to talk about it more. But yeah, so PlayStation inadvertently confirmed the date yesterday when they put up a premiere countdown on YouTube for a showcase for the title, which is actually in the story here, which I'll put the link in the Twitch chat. That does show, about sort of 8 to 10 minutes of gameplay in an overview, sort of putting a little bit of context around what's happening. And then it goes into a developer interview with Shinji Mikami, who's the founder of Tango Gameworks. He's also the guy who created Resident Evil. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of information in there, but expect to hear more on that very, very soon. Leaving behind the world of ghosts and goblins and other spooky things, let's turn our attention to Lego. Now, these were only announced overnight. They were inadvertently leaked via Amazon over in Europe. But we're getting 3 new helmets. So we're getting a Mandalorian helmet, the Dark Trooper helmet, which obviously was in the Mandalorian, and we're getting the Luke Skywalker Red 5 helmet. Now, the reason that these helmets are pretty cool is they are they're just display pieces. I do have the Boba Fett one. Lego were kind enough to send me that a while ago. They aren't a massive in their overall size. They stand maybe 20 centimeters tall when they're on their stand here, so they're not huge. They are very much what I like to think of them as a display piece if you don't have a lot of room but you like Lego and Star Wars. They've had a number in the series. Let me see if I can bring them up. Here we are, helmets. So they've got a number of them. Darth Vader, so there's Boba Fett, some Stormtroopers and TIE Fighter variants as well. So they do have a lot of them. I'll be honest, if I was going to get one, I'd probably just get the Luke Skywalker helmet. My name as well, which that's kind of a bit thing. I wouldn't get the Mandalorian simply because I already have the Boba Fett one, and they're essentially the same thing, just different colors. So yeah, these were announced just earlier today. Obviously the price that was on screen, the $59.99, is the US price. I don't believe the Australian listing has been updated yet. It wasn't earlier. No, it has been now. So $90 for each of them. Again, they're not massive. They're about 700 pieces of Lego a pop. That includes the stand, and then $90 each. So they are very expensive, but they're also, sort of very well worth it if you are, looking for something a little different from the regular ships and things like that on your Switch, on your shelf, right? Last week we got word that Yacht Club Games were hosting a new Yacht Club Games Presents showcase in conjunction with the team over at XPlay, and that took place this week. They started it off by revealing some DLC plans for Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon, which was the puzzle game that released late last year for PC and Switch. We also got a little bit of a look at the mechanical samurai one. I'm drawing a blank on its name. That was also put out a year ago, essentially, and that did very well for them. But one of the things that they did was that they teased the reveal of a new game, and we got Mina the Hollower. So this is the next title from Yacht Club Games. Obviously, the artwork features very much the same look as sort of Shovel Knight, with that very, very thick colouring. But if we go and have a look at some screenshots, it looks very much like old school Game Boy games, which is intentional. All the assets are sticking with the 8x8 pixel grid for everything, and they're also limiting themselves to the colours to ensure the Game Boy, sort of authentic look. What is very interesting is that if you had this in a square display, it would actually fit on the Game Boy screen. The only difference between this image now and what it would be on a Game Boy Color is the fact that it's in widescreen. Other than that, it is the same. So you play in this game as Mina, who is a mouse, and she is what is known as a hollower. Hollowers are unique in that they are studiers and of the earth and looking up what resources can do. She will be summoned by a friend, Lionel, who is the king of a kingdom, as a king usually is, and then she goes on this epic quest to discover what is going on in the world. What they've done, which I'll be honest, it is an absolutely disgusting move, regardless of whatever reason they put behind it, is they put the game on Kickstarter. As you can see, it's fully backed. They needed 435,000 Australian dollars. They're already at 830,000. They did obviously they put Shovel Knight up initially when they founded their studio, and their first original game was going to be Shovel Knight. And back then, Kickstarter is literally that, kickstarting a business. As it stands for a lot of people, kickstarting would provide, a sense of, funds to help your vision come to be. If you weren't doing it on Kickstarter, a lot of folks will go out of their way and do it via, they'll go to investors and say, hey, this is what we've got. If anyone's ever seen the show Shark Tank in the US, that is very much the same thing. People go in with their pitch and say, hey, we've got this, amazing idea for a product. It does this, it does that. Here's our prototype. But we need money to make it happen. That's what Kickstarter is. It just takes, the financial backing away from, one or two individuals and spreads it out across, 4,000 or 5,000 people. I don't have an issue with Kickstarter per se, but I have an issue with a company like Yacht Club, who is established, who has made their money using Kickstarter to help fund their next game. And what is interesting is that they did say they're doing it because it allows them to connect to the community, to connect to the people that want to play this game, which can be done on its own. They don't need Kickstarter for that. There's countless platforms now that allow it. They confirmed too that they're pretty much going to be funding the game, most of the development on their own. So I don't know why they've done it that way, but they have. It seems very weird to me that they have gone out of their way to do it in this fashion. But I'll be honest, I love Shovel Knight. I thought it was a great game. I didn't do the DLCs. I have them and I have sampled them a little bit, but I never finished them, purely because I just didn't have time, for that. I might etch out some time to do that. But let's take a look at the trailer for this one, because it is quite, a good looking game. So there we go. So that's the trailer for Mina. I honestly do think the game looks incredible. I think it's going to be a fun time. I just don't think Kickstarter was the right approach for this. Unfortunately, at this stage, the only confirmed platform is PC. They are aiming for Switch, PlayStation, Xbox as well, but they're not committed to those just yet. Purely because the game is still very much in early development. At the moment too, the timeline is December 2023, according to Kickstarter, but even that's not confirmed. So yeah, it's very weird that we're seeing very little information on the game, especially because, ideally we should have seen some more, about it by now. Switching pace quite a bit, we're going to talk about shoes, specifically Puma. They are doing another collaboration. Obviously, they did one recently with Animal Crossing, but they're doing a new collaboration with Minecraft. So they have both an adults range and a kids range. So if we come down here, we can have a look. This is the kids range. This one up here. The shoes obviously are in both, but the big thing with the kids is they've got the green hoodie. You've got the t-shirt and the pants. I don't like the t-shirt so much. I think that's very cheap and lazy in the design, but I do like the hoodie. It does have some cool features, like it's got a little headphone outlet here, so you can have your phone inside and keep the cord nice and neat. The pants, I do like the dirt design on the legging of the pants. For the adults, it's very, very, very simple stuff. Obviously, the t-shirt has a repeating pattern on it, your mileage is going to vary on that. I don't like repeating patterns. I think they're, you know, it's the lazy way of doing a design. But to each their own. Again, we've got the hoodie and we've got the pants. They are going online. So Puma's website on February 5, and then on February 17th they'll be exclusively in the Chadstone Puma store. So if you live anywhere near Chadstone down in Melbourne, you can pop in there and see them in person from the 17th of February onwards, and then pick up some for yourself. Obviously, t-shirts, pants, hoodies, everyone makes those. For me, the shoes are sort of really where things are at. Obviously, we've got a sort of very familiar pattern for Minecraft, and obviously we get it as well with the kids. I like them. I guarantee you they wouldn't have my sizes if I went for them. But yeah, it's one of those very cool things where these sort of collaborations do make sense and they do appeal to a lot of people. I just wish there was a little more to the adults range. The hoodie and the pants basically just have that sort of stylized Puma Minecraft logo, which is the green here in the middle, and that's really it. Obviously I don't want it to say Minecraft blared across the side of it, but even just putting like maybe disintegrating brick, or maybe the bedrock pattern on the sleeves and around the middle, right? Maybe that was all they needed to do. I do have a few Puma jackets myself, and they are very, very comfortable to wear. So if you are looking for something, a little different, maybe that's something that you can look into. We also got word from Battlefield developers DICE that they are delaying the launch of their first season of content towards the winter period of the Australian year. So we're looking around, late May, early June. It was due to start very soon, but they are delaying it in order to prioritize some very important fixes and updates to make the game appeal better to players. One of the big things that people are missing is the fact there's no scorecard. So at any point during a Battlefield 2042 match, you can't, hold down the tab key and bring up your, the scorecard between your team and the other team, or how many kills you've had, how many deaths you've had, what's, your ratios of hits and all that sort of stuff. That's been a staple of the Battlefield games since day one. For whatever reason, the game did not include it at launch, and people are very upset about that. They have committed to sharing, more information. I just wish this tweet would load things up properly. It's being very weird about it. But they do have a full breakdown about what's coming on. So as I said, scoreboard's a big one. They're doing more about voice communication for players and player profiles. There's also a dedicated Twitter channel. I don't think it's in this story here. But they're going to be doing a lot more communicating to players to say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're doing. These are the patches we're making. So, I did enjoy Battlefield 2042. My experience was obviously very limited in that most of my review period was done pre-release, so the game wasn't publicly available when I was playing it. So we had very limited, our search for players was very small. So we were very, lucky in finding people because we were pre-allocated to teams by EA and DICE, and we got to play it that way. Since then, players have had issues across the board with a number of things with it. The sad part is this is the second launch in a row for DICE where they fumbled the ball. They obviously had the issues with Battlefront 2 for Star Wars, where they launched it with microtransactions that basically broke multiplayer because people could pay money and basically spam and try and get the good characters and good weapons out of the gate. They took a long hard look at that system. They basically pulled it within a few days of the game releasing, and then they basically revamped the entire thing, and said, hey, this is not what we want to do. We want to do something better for the players. Now, the course correction on that game did work in their favor. The game was getting content for years. I believe that game was a 2018 release. 2018 seems about right. And they were still doing content, in 2020 for it. So they did do very, very well with it once they got things working. I still think Battlefield 2042 not having any sort of single player campaign is a bad choice because, it does... The Battlefield campaigns were never great, outside of the Bad Company titles, but they were fun. They were basically a way for you to learn the ins and outs of all the mechanics without having to worry about, running around with other players. Now, they did attempt to provide a training mode in 2042 where you can do that, with you and a team of bots fighting against them and another team of bots. But it's not the same. In Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1, or Battlefield V and Battlefield 1, they did away with the massive, 6, 7 hour, 8 hour campaign, and instead... Correct. But with Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1, they went out of their way and created what were essentially micro campaigns. So you still had, 6 to 8 hours of an actual story-driven campaign, but much like the original sort of Call of Duties where you were bouncing from player to player, in Battlefield 1, there was one mission where you were playing as an Australian during the battle, at Gallipoli. You were basically a runner, and you're having to communicate, information from the ship to shore. That's a very, very amazing way of doing it. So these sort of micro campaigns, these micro stories, did work. So I don't know why they opted not to do it for 2042, but that's what they've decided. They didn't want to do it this time. They wanted to just do a full multiplayer only experience. And they did, add in a lot more content. The Battlefield 1 campaign was incredible, as the Biggest Steve has just said in the Twitch chat. The Battlefield 5 or the Battlefield V campaign was also very good. Some obviously were better than others, but overall, those campaigns were fun to play. Battlefield 2042's biggest draw card, at launch at least, was the Portal mode. Because the number of people I saw playing classic Battlefield, modes, playing Battlefield Bad Company and Battlefield 3 content was honestly quite insane. The delay for Season 1, is another couple of months away while they attempt to get sort of the core of everything, fixed. And then when Season 1 does launch, there'll be a lot more information packed in there. Now, moving on to something that's perhaps a little bit lighter is that Apex Legends for mobile will soon soft launch here in Australia and New Zealand, if you're on Android. So the game is obviously coming to mobile. We've known about it for quite some time. We learnt about this a couple of months after the Steam and Switch releases were announced. It is being developed in-house at Respawn. It's not being made by Joe's mobile port company or anything like that. What is very interesting about it is that even though content-wise it will be identical to the other Apex Legends titles, it will not be cross-play compatible. So if you have friends that play this game on PlayStation and PC and Switch and Xbox, they will not be able to play with you if you pick this up on mobile. If you play this on mobile, you'll only ever be playing against other mobile players. That is a limitation that they've established for themselves because the game is inherently very different on mobile in terms of controls and things like that compared to the other platforms. What is very interesting is that, again, the game is soft launching. So the actual full release is not yet known when that'll happen. The soft launch is a registration thing at the moment. So if you have an Android device, you can register. If I scroll down here, we do have the link for it in the story where you can register for it. It did soft launch in, I believe, India and the Philippines last year on Android. And now, we're expecting to see it soft launch very, very soon on Android in additional countries. What that means going forward about when it's going to be released, we don't know. They do have a few screens. It does look, good. Obviously, things like the draw distance are a bit weird. It kind of looks very much like the Switch in that regard. The characters are all there. The features of all of them are all there. It's just going to be one of those interesting ones where we've got to wait and see you know, what are we going to see next from them, you know, in terms of, you know, timings and things like that. Again, it is being overseen by Respawn, so it's not, so, you know, the characters, the story, you know, the gameplay elements are all going to be the same. Speaking of Apex Legends, we also got a lot more information about Season 12 Defiance. So one of the big things that we are seeing with Season 12 is that they are launching a new game mode. They're overhauling the Olympus map, which a lot of players have had some issues with. They're obviously introducing Mad Maggie, who players will have met previously back when Fuse was first sort of revealed to the world. And there's obviously more stuff for the 3rd anniversary of the game as well. So the big addition, the three big you know, changes coming forward is obviously Mad Maggie. She's obviously a new legend to play as. Control, which is the new game mode for players to sort of get their teeth into. Excuse me. And then the changes to Olympus. So Control is the new mode, and Control is not a battle royale. Control is a 9v9 player, you know, team-based battle. So when players boot into Control, which at the moment is only going to be for a 3-week period, it's not going to be a very long mode. But when they boot into it, what they'll experience is very traditional capture the flag, you know, checkpoint battles. So you and your team of legends have to hold as many of the points on the map as possible. If you know, you hold 2 of the 3 points, you'll earn more points to your tally, and then the team who hits the target, you know, the first wins the round. If you die, there's no one and done on this mode, so if you die, you can respawn back in and get back into the fight. What's very unique about this is that obviously between, you know, you dying and sort of relaunching back into the map is you can respec your character. So if you don't like the weapon that you had, you can just pick a different one. You don't have to worry about ensuring you've got, you know, enough cash for weapons. You don't have to run around and try and find a gun. You can actually just pick a weapon for yourself. The reason why you want to make sure you do stay alive is that Control will offer a new ranking mode. So in each round, the ranking modes begin at 0, and then as you make kills, hold control points, assist other players with kills, and do various other feats, you'll start leveling up in the rankings. The higher you go, the more epic loot that you can earn for your character in that round. And I have to specify too, it is actually in that life. So if you know, your team makes it to 1,000 points, I think the goal is about 1,200 from memory. If you make it to 1,000 points and then you're at the top, you're the number 1 ranked player for both teams in there, you'll have some amazing gear. The catch though is that if you die and have to respawn, you reset your ranking, which means all the fancy gear that you unlocked, you no longer have access to until you get back up to that rank. So it's very, very important that you make conscious decisions about staying, you know, as accurate as you can there. Interesting. I haven't got it in here, but Olympus is changing. So there's a screenshot down here for you know, the 9v9 mode. But the map Olympus, which is sort of the floating city, is evolving for Season 12. One of the big additions is that they are making the map bigger. So player feedback and the internal, you know, feedback from the game makers themselves sort of came to the conclusion that the map as it stands today isn't that fun, because it's very easy to get from wherever you land to the center of the map. And because everyone rushes to the center of the map, it becomes a bit of a kill box, and the people that get there first generally have the best, you know, advantage in taking down other players. So one of the things they're doing is they're making the map much bigger. So they're not making it like 5 times the size, but it's going to be a larger map. And with that size means that they can put more obstacles in the way, and then, you know, create more of a, you know, unique perspective on pathways to get in and out of the various parts of the map. Obviously, this is going to be one of those ones where playing it will have to be done, because if they've made these changes and it makes it worse, I don't think it's going to make it worse. But if they make these changes and people don't agree with it, it's obviously going to be one of those very, very weird things. So one of the other things that we saw this week is the World Update Release number 7 for Flight Simulator for both PC and Xbox Series X and S, and this one added in Australia. So let's have a look at the trailer for this one, if you haven't seen it already. It is pretty incredible. So the updates that they've done them for Japan, they did them for Europe. What they tend to do is that they focus on specific regions, or in this case, a country, and they focus on the visuals for a number of areas. So obviously the game itself is very beautiful. It does a lot of photogrammetry, so taking high resolution photos and building assets up from those photos to make them look good. But these world updates are essentially fine-tuning those areas. So one of the big things with this one is that we are seeing, some iconic Australian locations redone, with this new attention to detail. But it's not just, painting more trees in or painting in a new landscape to enjoy. It's doing a lot more information about these various, things. As you can see here, one of these airports, one of the big things is, they focus on putting in smaller airports. So, we've got Melbourne International and Melbourne Tullamarine, Sydney Kingsford Smith. We've already got the big airports, but they put in these smaller airports, and these become, places to explore, to get off the beaten track, if you will. One of the things that is very interesting with these elements is that they're generally not done by Asobo. So a Melbourne-based company called Orbix, who are based out at Essendon Airport, were the ones who created these new airports for the game. They're actually a studio that develops assets for flying games and flying simulators around the world anyway. So this is sort of their bread and butter, and they were the ones that did this work for the game. So there you go. So that's the new world update for Flight Simulator for both PC and Xbox. We did review it back on PC when it launched. Then we gave it a 10 out of 10. We gave it a perfect score because it's just such an amazing experience. Obviously, that game is not going to be for everyone. So it is included inside of Xbox Game Pass for both PC and console. So if you do have those platforms and you do want to give it a go, it is there. It's currently not on Xbox Cloud Gaming, so if you don't have either platform, you can't sample it via the cloud at this time, because it is a very intense title. It does require either a fair amount of installation or a solid internet connection for streaming assets as you go, and that's just not possible yet for the cloud. It's definitely, again, as I said, not a game for everyone, because it does require you to sort of have a bit of an understanding about planes. But even if you don't, sometimes getting in and just seeing how far you can get in a little Cessna or even one of the bigger commercial jets is quite fun. The final thing we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the Gran Turismo 7 State of Play that happened yesterday. So again, PlayStation have had a very big week. We got the Bungie buyout, we got details for Gran Turismo 7, and then Ghostwire Tokyo this morning. Gran Turismo 7 I'm not going to recap everything from the state of play. Flight Simulator is one of those games where once you get in the zone, you can just lose yourself, as the biggest thief pointed out in the chat. And again, it's not because you're having to hit a point, within to get a gold trophy for the time or anything like that. It's a bit of a zen experience where it sort of just takes you in and just lets you experience it. So because there isn't a clock to beat or players to pass, in a circuit. There's no story or bosses to fight. It's just you experiencing what the game is offering. So yeah, it is very, very, very good. And again, it is included on Xbox Game Pass for both console and PC. But back with Gran Turismo 7, the presentation went for 30 minutes. In it, they talk about almost everything the game has to offer, from the 400 plus cars available to the game to the almost 100 tracks across 30 odd locations from around the world, some of which are based on real world locations like the Daytona Speedway circuit, and some of them are based on what they call fantasy tracks, i.e. the tracks that the designers at Polyphony Digital wanted to race upon. We got a lot more information about it from how the Gran Turismo Cafe works. So the cafe will give you sort of, micro missions to achieve, right? To obtain cars or to drive cars in specific circumstances. We got information about how the weather is going to be accurate to the location of the tracks. So a track that is set in Los Angeles, like Laguna Seca, it will behave very differently with the weather compared to a track, say, in Japan or Europe. So for players who have played essentially any racing game over the years, Laguna Seca is a very well-known track. It has one of those very sharp down turns. I don't know what the official name of it is, but it goes, you go up a hill and then you go sort of up and over the ridge and then down sharp to the left, sharp to the right, all the while going downhill. So weather on that track will behave differently because of its location on the planet. So how close something is to the sea compared to, if it's in a desert location, if it's in a forest location, it will start to behave very differently for, the weather. And it's not just they're saying, oh, you're in this track's in California, so it has to have this type of weather. Clouds will naturally accumulate above the track. So you could start a race, there'd be no clouds, but depending on the length of the race, the more you play it, clouds may start to gather. And if there is enough clouds in the sky, they may start to rain. If the track becomes wet, then it will start to impact the handling of your car and the other cars on the track. But even if the clouds only rain for 10 minutes, it's enough. You can see here in the picture, there are some puddles, on the track, off to the left here and then off against the grass on the right. Those puddles will take a while to dry out, especially in areas where it's maybe not as warm as, say, Southern California. So, the actual, tracks themselves will be dynamic based on the weather, and obviously time of day will also be a factor. The license program that the series has been well known for is also making a return, but this time it's not just going to be, hey, if you want to race in this race, you've got to have this right license. The licenses will also start to teach you more about the game, so you're not just going to be, hoping for the best that you get, the B class license. In order to get the B class license, you'll have to do some very specific moves in order to prove you have the skills needed for that class of racing. We also got a lot of information on the photo mode. So there's two types of photo modes. There's one called scapes, and scapes are essentially real world locations. So they've taken, background photos for these locations, and then you can insert any car from your collection into it. So as you can see here, there's a Mercedes-Benz car. In the footage, we saw them do it with Fords and Toyotas and Mazdas, and you can do a lot of stuff. So you can do everything. You can do, bloom lighting, streaks, time of day, all that sort of stuff. But then there's also the same sort of, all the tools will carry across to the regular photo mode. So if you're, pulling the perfect line, on the Daytona circuit, and there's, you've just passed 3 cars in a row, and you're you're past the last one with millimeters to spare, you can jump into the photo mode and take a snapshot of that moment. But it's not just taking a still shot of it. You can actually tweak all the settings to make it look as great as it can. As I said, we do have the full presentation here at the bottom of the story as well, because again, it does go for 30 minutes. We got new information about some of the music assets, and how the music will play with replays and some new modes that the game will offer. But yeah, they also did confirm too that it is sticking with its March 4 release date for both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. And we got a confirmation on that it does require online connection for essentially all the game modes. And that's purely so people can't modify according to here. I can always remember it. Kazunori Yamuchi. He said in order to avoid players essentially cheating, modifying their save files to give them the best cars or the best times on the tracks, it requires you to be online to ensure that you can't do that. Honestly, that's a bit of it's a wimpy answer, but that's what they're going with. So if you want to play GT7 on your PlayStation 5, you essentially need to be connected to the internet to play almost all aspects of it. So there we are. We are at the end of the Maxi Geek show for this week, ending the 4th of February. I said there was a lot of news in this week. Some of it was smaller news, some of it was bigger news, but there was a lot still. Correct. So the biggest thing was just put in the Twitch chat about the online requirement for GT7. It's not even. So he put in the comment that it's not a particularly friendly choice for people who may not have access to internet. There are some countries where PlayStation 5 is available where internet is spotty. In even parts of Australia and New Zealand, some internet locations, they function, but maybe they're not the best for a consistent streaming, service. How much data has to be transferred to and from at any given time, we don't know. As I said, the comment has just come from Yamaguchi-san about it requiring, for save data. So whether or not that means you've got to download your save from the server at the start of your match, the start of your play session, and uploads at the end, we don't know. If that is the case, maybe it won't be so bad. But I'll be honest, it's like Destiny and The Division and all these other games where if I'm not playing multiplayer titles with other people, I shouldn't be required to be online. I hate it with mobile games when they're like, oh, like Super Mario Run requires me to be online for it. That is not something that makes me want to play your game. If I'm playing against people, if I'm uploading scores, then sure, I get it. Online makes sense. But if I'm just playing on my own, I shouldn't need the internet to experience that game. That's it. We are at the end of the episode. This will be uploaded to YouTube as well, so if you've missed it live here on Twitch, you can watch the replay there as well. We'll be back on Tuesday for our next entry in our 007 Games Bond series. We are starting The World Is Not Enough on the Nintendo 64. We did, unfortunately, skip 007 Racing because it just wasn't fun. And we also skipped, we wrapped up the Tomorrow Never Dies experience from the PlayStation 1, purely because we got to a boss fight in one stage, but it took us like 9 attempts to get to the boss. And then being, early game design, the boss had almost limitless health and weapons, and we had very little because that's not the type of level it was. And, we got our ass handed to us, and we had to then attempt to ski down this mountain again, and it was not fun. So we gave up on that. So we're moving ahead to the 4th game in the series. But yeah, so we'll be back on Tuesday for that. 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time for that title. Then we'll be back on Friday at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time for the next entry in the Maxi Geek show, where we may try and have someone else join in so we can have a bit more of a discussion instead of me just rambling on for an hour. But if you did watch live, thank you for watching live. If you did watch the replay, hope you enjoyed the replay. Otherwise, we'll see you online next time. Happy gaming.